Mark was the kind of man who made the world feel steady. He had a quiet strength, the kind that didn't demand attention, but simply existed, anchoring everything around him. From the moment we met, I knew he was different. He wasn't the loudest person in the room, nor the most outwardly charming, but he had a way of making me feel safe, like no matter what happened, he would be there, steady as ever. Our love story wasn't dramatic or full of grand gestures, but it was real. It was built on small moments, Sunday mornings in bed, cooking dinner together, the way he always kissed my forehead before leaving for work. I thought those moments were enough to last forever. Marriage, though, has a way of shifting over time. The passion that once burned so brightly between us dulled into a comfortable warmth. At first, I didn't mind. There was something beautiful about knowing someone so completely, about finishing each other's sentences and understanding what the other needed without having to ask. But as the years passed, I found myself craving something I couldn't quite name. It wasn't that I stopped loving Mark. I never did. It was just that life became predictable. Work, dinner, sleep, repeat. Conversations became about bills and schedules rather than dreams and desires. Somewhere along the way, I started feeling invisible. That's how it began, not with some grand temptation, but with something as simple as wanting to be noticed. Daniel was a coworker, someone I had worked with for years, without ever thinking twice about. But then, one day, he started paying attention to me in a way that felt new. He would ask how my day was going and actually listen to the answer. He would compliment things Mark hadn't noticed in years, the way I did my hair, the color of my dress. It started small, harmless, just friendly conversations that made me feel a little less invisible. But then the messages became more frequent. The laughter lingered a little longer. I started looking forward to seeing him in a way that made me uneasy, but instead of pulling away, I let myself fall further. The first time we went out for drinks after work, I told myself it was nothing. Just coworkers unwinding after a long day. But when he touched my hand, a thrill ran through me, something electric and dangerous. I could have pulled away. I should have. But I didn't. And once that line was crossed, it was too easy to keep going. One mistake turned into another, until one night, I did the one thing I swore I never would. The moment it was over, I knew I had made the worst mistake of my life. Guilt hit me like a physical force, squeezing the air from my lungs. I went home that night and crawled into bed beside Mark, feeling like a stranger in my own marriage. He stirred slightly, half asleep, and instinctively pulled me closer, murmuring that he loved me. I wanted to cry. I wanted to confess everything, to tell him I was weak, that I had made a terrible, unforgivable mistake. But I was afraid. Afraid of losing him, afraid of destroying the life we had built. So I said nothing. I told myself it would never happen again, and it didn't. But it didn't matter. The damage had already been done. I carried the weight of my betrayal like a sickness, each moment with Mark a painful reminder of what I had thrown away. I started trying harder, making more effort, telling myself that if I loved him enough, if I was a good enough wife, maybe I could erase what I had done. Maybe I could make it so that it never happened. But life doesn't work that way. Life doesn't let you rewrite your mistakes. It was a rainy night when Mark called to say he was on his way home. His voice was warm, familiar, full of love. He told me he would be home soon. He told me he loved me. And then he was gone. The accident was brutal. A truck lost control on the slick road, crashing into his car with full force. He never stood a chance. When the hospital called, I didn't understand the words at first. My mind refused to process them. Even when I arrived and they took me to see his body, I kept thinking it was some kind of mistake, that he would wake up, that this wasn't real. But it was real. He was gone. Grief is unbearable on its own, but grief tangled with guilt is something far worse. It claws at me, an unrelenting weight on my chest. Every day, I wake up knowing that Mark died, believing I was faithful, believing that I was the woman he thought I was. He never knew the truth. He never had the chance to decide if he could forgive me. He left this world loving me, trusting me, thinking our life together was untouched by betrayal. I wonder sometimes if he knew. If, in those final moments, some part of him sensed the weight I carried. Would he have forgiven me? Would he have hated me? Would he have left me? I'll never know. All I know is that I would give anything, to go back and undo what I did. But life doesn't offer second chances. There is no way to fix this. Mark is gone forever, and I am left here, carrying a regret so heavy that I don't know if I will ever be able to put it down.